Section 2.2, more on solving linear equations. So this is going to be just a extension of what we did in section 2.1. It's just basically more interesting problems. So let's do on page number 53, problem number 2. In exercises 1 through 47, solve the equation. -4 times 2 minus 6a plus 1 equals 4 plus 2 times 3a plus 1. Okay, so let me solve this. So first let me multiply everything inside the parentheses by -1. Change all the signs inside the parentheses since there's a negative outside the parentheses. Multiply 2 inside the parentheses by the derivative property. And so I get -4 times 2. Changing the sign, I get a -6a. Changing the sign, I get -1 equals 4 plus 2 times 3a is 6a. 2 times 1 is 2. Let me combine like terms. So I get a -4 times 2 minus 1 is 1 minus 6a equals 4 plus 2 is 6 plus 6a. Let me multiply a -4 inside the parentheses. So by this derivative property, I get a -4. -4 times -6a is a positive 24a. Now let me use the additive property of equality to isolate x on one side of my equation. So let me subtract 6a from both sides of my equation. So that by the additive property of equality, I get a -4 plus 18a equals 6. Let me again use the additive property of equality to isolate a on one side of my equation. And so I get 18a is equal to 10. Now let me use the multiplicative property of equality to solve for a. So let me divide both sides of my equation by 18. And so a is equal to, well, notice I can divide both 10 and 18 by 2. So let's divide both the numerator and denominator by 2. And so I get 5/9. And that's your answer. Let me do problem number, let's say 16. X over 5 plus 3/2 equals 3/10. Well, we have a whole bunch of fractions here. I guess what I'll try to do is I'll try to get rid of those fractions. And so I'll try to multiply both sides of my equation by least common denominator. The least common denominator in this case, I have a 5, a 2, and a 10. So least common denominator is 10. So let me multiply both sides of my equation by 10. Maybe I'll write it as 10/1. 10 divided by 5 is 2 times x is 2x. 10 divided by 2 is 5 times 3 is 15. 10 divided by 10 is 1 times 3, is 3. Now let me use the additive property of equality to isolate x on one side of my equation. Let me subtract 15 from both sides of my equation. So 2x is equal to -12. Now let me divide both sides of my equation by 2 in order to solve for x. So by the multiplicative property of equality, I have that x is equal to -6. And that is my answer. Let me do problem number 38. 1/2 x plus 3 1/4 x plus 3 equals 4. Let me multiply the 3 inside the parentheses. So by this derivative property, I have the following: 1/2 x plus 3 times 1/4. Well, I can write 3 is 3 over 1. So let's multiply numerator times numerator. 3 times 1 is 3. Denominator times denominator. 1 times 4 is 4. 3 times 3 is 9. Let me get rid of the fractions. So if I look here, the least common denominator is, well, I have a 2, a 4, a 1, and a 1. So the least common denominator in this case is a 4. So let me multiply each of these terms by 4. 4 divided by 2 is 2, times x is 2x. 4 divided by 4, well, it cancels. I just get 1, times 3x is 3x. 4 times 9 is 36. 4 times 4 is 16. Let me combine like terms. 2x plus 3x is 5x. What in the world is this? Hey, wait. Okay. Not really sure what that is. 2x plus 3x is 5x plus 36 equals 16. Let me subtract 36 from both sides of my equation. So by the additive property of equality, I have that 5x is equal to -20. Let me divide both sides of my equation by 5. So x is equal to negative divided by positive is a negative. 20 divided by 5 is 4. So x is equal to a -4. Let me do problem number 64. 1.5 x minus 18.4 equals 0.6x minus 22.9. Either you can just deal with these decimals, or maybe I'll just get rid of the decimals. So let me multiply both sides of my equation by 10. So by the multiplicative property of equality, I have, well, 10 times 1.5x is 15x. 10 times 18.4 is 184. 10 times 0.6x is 6x. 10 times 22.9 is 229. So let's try to isolate x on one side of my equation. So let me subtract 6x from both sides of my equation. And so by the added property of equality, I have 9x minus 184 equals -229. Let me add 184 to both sides of my equation. So I get here that 9x is equal to -45. Let me divide both sides of my equation by 9. So by the multiplicative property of equality, I have x is equal to negative divided by positive is negative. 45 divided by 9 is 5. Let me do problem number 72. 5 times the quantity x minus 2 plus 11. Oh, actually, here, wait. That's on the next page. That was problem number. Ah, okay, so here, 1 second. So I guess note the following, that if you're able to solve the equation, and so if you get that, your variable is equal to some number, then we call equations of this type, where you can actually solve and get a number, like what I've done above, a conditional equation. Conditional equations have only one solution. Okay. If instead you try to solve an equation, and let's say that you come up with a number. So this is case one. So when solving an equation, you could also come up with the following situation. Suppose you come up that, the x's cancel. Somehow you cancel all the x's. So then you come up with an equation where you have a number is equal to the same number. Well, equal to a number. Okay. So we have two sort of cases here. If these two numbers are the same, then this is called an identity. So equations of that type are called identities. It turns out that this will have an infinite number of solutions. And so in general, you'll either have maybe all real numbers or maybe some infinite set of solutions. So maybe all real numbers except for 12 or something. So it'll have some infinite, subset of whatever, let's say the reals. Okay, so that could be your solution. Otherwise, if these two numbers are different, so in the case, if we cancel and we got 0, or let's say 12 equals 12, then this would be an identity. You have infinite number of solutions. If you come with a situation when you have, 18 equals 45, and so if these two numbers are different, then this type of equation is a contradiction. So in this case, it has 0 number of solutions. This has no solution. Okay. So Let me do problem, let's say, 72. In exercises 66 through 85, determine whether the equation has only one solution, no solution, or is an identity. Okay, so 5 times x minus 2 plus 11 equals 5x plus 2. So we're going to have to solve this using the same technique that we've done before. But then at the end, we will be able to determine if this is a contradiction, an identity, or if this is some sort of conditional equation, depending if the x's remain or if they cancel out. So let's multiply 5 inside the parentheses. So by distributive property, I have 5x. 5 times negative 2 is a negative 10 plus 11 equals 5x plus 2. Combine like terms, and so I have 5x. 11 minus 10 is 1 equals 5x plus 2. Let's subtract 5x from both sides of my equation. And so by the additive property of equality, I get, well, the 5x's cancel. You get 1 is equal to, 5x's cancel. Oops. One is equal to 2. So you notice, well, there are no x's anymore. And so we don't have any x's, but 1 is not 2. So that means that this is a contradiction. And so this has no solutions. They were asking us if it has 0 solution, infinite number solution, 1 solution. So in this case, it has 0 solutions. And that's what they were actually asking us. So that is your answer. Let me do problem number 67. 5 times the quantity x plus 1 minus x equals 4x plus 5. Again, let's use the distributive property. So let me multiply 5 inside the parentheses. So 5 times x is 5x. 5 times 1 is 5. Minus x equals 4x plus 5. Well, let's combine like terms. 5x minus x is 4x. Plus 5 equals 4x plus 5. Let me try to isolate x on one side of my equation. So let's subtract 4x from both sides of my equation. And so I get, well, the x's cancel. I get 5 is equal to 5. Well, there are no x's anymore. And so in this case, this is a identity. Since 5 is equal to 5, that's a true statement. Those two numbers are the same. So in this case, actually, all real numbers satisfy this equation. And it just asks us how many solutions there are. Well, in this case, there's an infinite number of solutions. Let me do problem number 78. Three-fourths. Oops. 8 over 9x plus 4 equals 2/3 x minus 9. Okay, so let me simplify this. So let me multiply the 3/4 inside the parentheses. So this is the same as 3/4 times 8 over 9x plus 3/4 times 4, maybe I'll write that as 4 over 1, equals 2/3 x minus 9. Okay, so let me simplify this. 8 divided by 4 is 2. 9 divided by 3 is 3. So I have 2/3 x plus the 4's cancel. 3 is equal to 2/3 x minus 9. Let me subtract 2/3 x from both sides of my equation. I could get rid of the fractions if I want, but the 2/3 x's cancel. So I just get 3 is equal to negative 9. Again, 3 is not equal to negative 9, so there are no solutions. So no solution. This is a contradiction. 3 is not equal to negative 9. Let me do problem number 84. Four 4 times x minus 0.3 plus 0.1 equals x plus 0.3. Let me multiply 4 inside the parentheses. So I get 4x minus 1.2 plus 0.1 is equal to x plus 0.3. Combine like terms. I guess I'm not going to get rid of decimals. Negative 1.2 plus 0.1 is a negative 1.1 equals x plus 0.3. Let me subtract x from both sides of my equation in order to isolate x on one side. So I get 3x minus 1.1 equals 0.3. Let me add 1.1 to both sides of my equation. So I get 3x is equal to 1.4. Let me divide both sides of my equation by 3. And so x is equal to, you can actually multiply both numerator and denominator by 5. And so you get x is equal to 7 over 15, or if you, I guess, divided it out on your calculator, you would get 0.46666 forever. So 0.46 where the 6's repeat. So in this case, oops, I didn't care about that. I don't care about the solution. And so in this case, there is one solution. This is called a conditional equation. So this is sort of the usual case where you have one solution. Let me do problem number 79. 5, 1 over 6x minus 1 minus x over 2 equals x over 3 minus 5. Let me multiply 5 inside the parentheses. And so I get 5 over 6x minus 5 minus x over 2 equal x over 3 minus 5. Well, the least common denominator in this case is 6. I have here a 6, a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 1. So the least common denominator is 6. 6 is canceled, so we get 5x. 6 times 5, 30. 6 divided by 2 is 3x. 6 divided by 3 is 2 times x is 2x. 6 times 5 is 30. Let me combine like terms. So I get 5x minus 3x is 2x minus 30. Equals 2x minus 30. Subtract 2x from both sides of my equation. And so I get negative, the x's cancel. So since the x's cancel, I have here that negative 30 is equal to negative 30. And so this has an infinite number of solutions. This is an identity. Oops. An identity. In matter of fact, in this case, the solution is all real numbers. Okay. So I guess you should do group work 2.2. So for Monday, and whatever Monday is, Monday is September the 5th. Okay. Look over this, obviously, and do group work 2.2. The password is solving. This is all one word. Linear. Okay, let's try that again. Solving linear equations. And so, all one word, solving linear equations. Okay, so that's it.